Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of the A-LIEP and ICADL conferences. My name is Thongtip Punlap, and I'm the MC for today, keynote session. Today is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, who is going to give a talk on sharing restricted data, challenges, protocols, and implications for digital libraries. Our speaker, Professor Jane Greenberg, is currently the director of the Metadata Research Center at the College of Computing and Informatics at Drexel University. Drexel University. She also serves on the advisory board of the Dlives Metadata Initiative Hub and the steering committee for the NSF Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub. She also has extensive research experience and has received numerous awards and honors for her leadership and for her research. And more importantly, she has traveled over 8,000 miles from the US to be here with us, across the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Jane Greenberg.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a true honor to be here and have an opportunity to meet new people and see some old friends and visit this lovely city and university. And I'm pleased also to have an opportunity to share with you some research I've been engaged with and hope to engage us in somewhat of a discussion, time permitting, about the implications of sharing restricted data on digital libraries. So you can see the title of my talk, and I'm going to ask a little bit for participation. So I'm first going to ask people maybe to raise hands with a few questions. So be ready and think about this work that I'm sharing with you at the end, so maybe we can have some open discussion or some questions. Again, time permitting. So just an outline of an overview. I said I'm going to start with questions. I like questions. I'm a professor, right? So we like to ask student questions. I'm then going to dig down into this topic of data sharing and set the stage for the work that we're involved in the Metadata Research Center in sharing restricted data. So we also refer to that as closed data. Then I will specifically talk about what is called a Spoke Award. This is funded by the National Science Foundation in the United States, and then wrap up with our discussion on implications for digital libraries and share some of my thoughts and see what may evolve, and also talking about the larger field of information and library science. So, as I said, I would have a few questions for folks. So to get a sense of who's here, and you can raise your hand multiple times or for all of the above. Who here considers themselves library, archival, information, or data scientist? Okay, not less than half, interesting. Okay, computer scientist, although maybe some of you are waiting for the all of the above category. I like to classify, so how many consider themselves researchers? Good. Educators? Excellent. All of the above? I think we got a lot. Other. Is there a group that I have not identified here? Anybody willing to share? Jane, you forgot. Maybe social scientists. We are all sort of social scientists in our way, especially people who are dealing with behavioral implications of digital libraries. So I could add that to the mix next time. Okay, so Has anybody here ever deposited research data into a digital library or repository? I have, raise your hands high, I want to kind of see. So we've got a small percentage, at least 4 or 5 people. I actually have. So, yes, I see somebody pointing out Hongwei. So, yes, Songpan, have you? Not yet. Not yet. Okay. If you did it, was it in an open repository? Yes? Yeah. Yeah, good. Figured that. Anybody deposit something in a restricted repository? Probably not, although you never know. Okay. Don't know. I deposited, but I don't know what it was. I just know I did it because my boss told me to. Okay. Haven't done it, but really think I should. How many people fall into that category? Like you have a university repository, you're maybe even involved in building one of these things and trying to get faculty, but you don't do it yourself. I see one. We call this the shoemaker's children syndrome. So the shoemaker doesn't buy good shoes for their children. People who are involved in developing repositories and involved in data sharing are not necessarily doing it. Like they're building the infrastructure for other faculty at their universities, but they may not be doing it. Okay, has anybody ever shared data? Not necessarily in a repository, but a research colleague asked you, can I look at your data? Very nice, good, all right, excellent. We got quite a few people. So I did, when I first started as a faculty at UNC Chapel Hill, and guess what? It helped me get tenure. So I was starting out at the University of North Carolina, and I guess I had been there for maybe like a year and a half, and I had written a paper that was published in the JASIS journal, which I think probably a lot of people are familiar with. That's the journal that comes out of ACES. And I published, it was on metadata, obviously, for visual resources. And I got an email from a person whose name I had known, but I didn't know who she was. Her name was Laura Bartola at Kent State University. And she asked me to see the data behind my article. And like I had this panic, like, oh no, something's wrong with my data. Why does she want it? Should I share it? What does it look like? Do I still have it? I went through this whole process. But I shared the data because in her email, she had said, Marcia Zhang said I should contact you. So Marcia Zhang was my outside dissertation committee member. So you never say no. Like if she had been some stranger, maybe I would have handled it differently. So I shared my research data, and every time Laura published on a paper where she used my classification system, she cited my paper. Had I deposited that research data somewhere, and I still haven't, and it's now back in 2002, she might have also cited my research data. But anyhow, I got a lot of citations out of sharing my data with her and having a published paper. And some of us are aware of this evolving field of altmetrics, where we are getting credit now in the academy and in research, not just for published papers, but data and code and other kinds of assets that we can make available to share about science or our research. Okay, so has anybody ever thought, this is the last question, so bear with me, at least for now till the end. Have you ever thought like, wow, if only I could get this data, and maybe it's data about health records of people or food purchase and income, you know, something that, if you could just like Facebook, give me that data, I could conduct research that would have some real world impact. I could try my IR techniques, I could try some other kind of research. If I could just get that data, you know, but it's too complicated maybe. Has anybody ever thought that, like, I would really like that data? No? Yes? I see. I think we should all be thinking about what data can I get that I could look at. So I'm seeing head shake. All right. So if you have thought about that, maybe you also said, but I can't because, oh, there's legal issues, right? It's restricted. there's privacy concerns, and there are policies. There are policies at a hospital. They can't just say, oh, here's all the patient data, right? Because you've got PII, personal identifying information, or here's all the data from the Facebook searches. They can't do that. It's restricted, and it really causes a barrier. So I want to move on now to setting the stage for the research that we're doing that's involving data sharing. So data sharing has, in the last, I want to say 10 years, maybe 8 years, become more and more popular in sort of the open science, open data context. And so some of the chief motivators are the data deluge. There's a lot of digital data out there. Science is very digital. Although you'd be surprised, I mean, I've visited some of our US national research centers. One example is the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, and they're still keeping logs, paper log books. So we're not fully digital, despite what we think. There's open science and open source, which has helped motivate this idea of open data and data sharing. This is sort of the classic piece, Jim Gray, right? Microsoft Research and the fourth paradigm, and the promise of data-driven science for new discoveries. Very classic piece that has motivated a lot of the open science data sharing environment, and it's the fourth paradigm. So if you haven't read this piece, it's quite profound and influential in the data sharing context. And then the opportunity, if we share data, if we share it in the open context, we can address society's grand challenges in energy, health, the environment, and solve real problems. And so that goes back to that question, like, I've thought, like, if only I could have that data, but there are restrictions. So we've all seen things in the popular press, and let me share some of the examples that are out there. So, right, open data and agriculture could solve problems in world hunger if this data was open and accessible. There's recently here in Thailand in the press about sharing data on water and actually the quality of water and its impact on farming. So this might be something people are familiar with, because some water is really not suitable for farming and other water is. And if that data is open or at least shareable to the right people, you could have better distribution of water. And this is actually a worldwide phenomena. So I read the New York Times. I love it. And there's been many article about curing certain diseases, and here's just an example from February 2016 about the cure for cancer and the data that's out there. But here's where we get into that restriction, right? Personal identifying information. People don't necessarily want to be identified if they have cancer and they have a job, and their boss would know, and there's very sensitive information there. So, but if we could figure a way to share it on a grand scale. So here's another one about the cure for cancer that was in Wired magazine. So it's making it beyond just popular press into computing literature. And this very interesting effort at Georgia Tech, which is Georgia Tech's Data Science for Social Good, that I've been learning more about this concept. So they call it DSSG. DSSG is the acronym. We like acronyms in our field a lot. But what they're looking at in this community is just even the local distribution of food into neighborhoods where there's not adequate food supply, particularly fresh food supply. They've also been looking at crime and education and the implications on neighborhoods. And this is just an incredibly innovative project involving students. So again, sharing data, And last one here is one on crime. This is an earlier one from 2013, so perhaps of interest. So just to summarize some of the reasons why sharing data is good, right? Everyone can have contribute to the larger circle. You get a more complete picture of the phenomena that's being studied, okay? Better return on investment, because if your federal funds or private research funds are going to researchers where they're studying something important, such as a cure for cancer or hunger and so forth, they are gathering data, but they are not gathering it all. And if you can pool that research together from the various communities studying that phenomena, you can get a more complete picture, and you have more researchers looking at that data. That's quite powerful, a better return on the investment. In the US, there's been federal data sharing mandates. This is happening in the UK. I know in China there's a big push now for open data in some sectors. I don't know globally about many of the countries represented here, but I do know that at least at universities there is opportunities to build repositories and try to at least encourage scholars in sharing data when they can. At the federal levels, I'd be interested to learn more. So, better insights. In my own personal research, and I would say the research of the Metadata Research Center, we've been involved in a number of open data sharing initiatives. So that's what's on the left. And I am curious how many people have heard of the Dryad Data Repository? Anybody here? Just a few, okay. And Holly White is sitting there, who worked on it quite a bit. And so this is a data sharing initiative that is now international, and the data sharing is integrated with the publication process. So if a scientist publishes in a certain journal, and there are Dryad identified journals like American Naturalist, Microbiology and Evolution, key journals. If you publish if you get your paper accepted as a scientist, when you hear from the editor, congratulations, your article has been accepted for publication in so-and-so journal. You also get a note that says, put your data in Dryad. So the scientist needs to put their data in the Dryad repository. I've been involved in it for a very long time, that DOI, a digital object identifier, that the researcher then puts in the citation section of the published article of record, so that when readers look at the article that's been published, they can click on the DOI and then access the data that underlies the research. It's been very successful. There are over 300 journals now that are represented. About 200 are partner journals. However, if you are a scientist and you understand Dryad, you can go find your data from another journal that's not a identified Dryad journal, but you can still put your data in there. You can still get a DOI for research that's been published in the past. And I actually have put my own data in there for a conference paper that I published, a Dublin Court conference paper. Dublin Court conference proceedings are not a Dryad identified journal, but I wanted to put my data in there, and I can go back and search, and I can see that my data has been downloaded a number of times. It's kind of exciting. So this is one of multiple types of projects. The other thing that's actually exciting about the Dryad project is there are some journals that request data deposit in Dryad as part of the peer review process. So you need to put your data in there first. Your article is peer reviewed. The researchers look at your data. And then after your article is accepted, you have a chance to update your data. Other initiatives that we've been involved with in the US are the NSF cyber infrastructure initiatives. These are global initiatives to share data across different communities, and they're open data initiatives. The Data One initiative is devoted to open science in the earth sciences domain, and the DFC DataNet Federation Consortium, we are looking at sharing data across interdisciplinary environments. So there's representation from oceanography, social science, earth science, and health science, trying to look at ways we can make data interoperable. So the Metadata Research Center has been very involved in the metadata aspects in making that data open. And then the last one, it's a little hard to see, but are people familiar with that image, right? The linked data cloud. So sharing vocabularies as open data kinds of sources. So that's where we've been involved. Now let's go to the other side and think about closed data, restricted data. So some of you, missed all my exciting questions, but you can ask your neighbor later about them. And I asked people about, have you shared data? Have you shared data in a restricted repository? Have you thought about data? So these are three large initiatives that are taking place in the United States, and they are data sharing initiatives, but the data is not open. The first two involve sharing genome sequences and pooling data together to look at gene mutations and ways to understand genes to hopefully cure cancer. The first one, which is Dana-Farber, the Oregon Health Science University, and the Ontario Institute. Actually, I could say that one is international because it involves the US and Canada. And then the Genomics Cloud Project. And these two are figuring out ways to even interact with each other. But I can't go in there, me as just a user right now, and go, like, I want all this gene sequence data. It's closed, and there are permissions set. Another one, and I know there are a few US folks here, is FICO. So this is our tax rating, our rating in terms of scores.